See everybody. Anybody do anything exciting on their break? We know Masa went to Japan. Anybody else do anything exciting?
I went to Guadalajara.
Nice. Oh.
Yeah, to visit some friends.
Did you fly?
Yeah, from Tijuana.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nice. It's 3 hours.
Yes, I've actually flown through there a couple of times.
Oh, you have? Yeah, it's so easy.
Did you park on the side of the CVS?
No, we actually took the car and parked on the airport.
Yeah, I
It's
did
a
the
lot cheaper to leave the car there too.
I saw CVS also.
Yeah, I've done the CBX, but then my daughter didn't have a passport. And they don't think, you don't need a passport if you have a global entry. The card, so you just cross with the.
Really?
Yeah, you don't need a passport if you have a medical. Yes. I mean, we have one, but hers expired 2 days into the trip, we didn't notice, so we have to do that.
It's always the Japanese customs asks me so many damn questions.
Really?
Yeah,
No matter what?
no matter what.
Oh, they just want the conversation.
Do you have a Japanese?
Come on, Masa.
Passport?
Yeah, I do.
Hi.
And it's current?
Yeah.
The last time, well, 2 times ago when we went to Brazil, I told Roberta, please don't tell them we're Brazilian, don't do it. Because her passport was expired. Oh, we at least an hour and a half.
Oh, really? Why did you let? Okay, hi. Wow, how much is that? Pero por qué?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's fine. We are live.
We are live. Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year to those who I have not seen. Thank you to those who are watching live via YouTube. My name is Ricky Shabazz. I have the honor and privilege of being the president of San Diego City College. It is a new year, which means a fresh start, excitement, probably more excitement than many of us were prepared for. Today is the first of 2 College Council meetings during intercession. I want to thank our wonderful faculty for making accommodations to be here, because certainly they could be off. Wish that some of the operations of the college could be off, but the show always goes on. Today, if you didn't have a chance to review, the governor released the first budget known as the preliminary budget. There'll be a May revise, and there's a constitution requirement for the state to adopt a budget. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, but before I get into that piece in our agenda, I want to do a roll call. Mona is not with us. Tilly?
Present.
Robbie?
Present.
Caesar is on an interview committee, or did I see Caesar online? No, that was not Caesar. Okay. Oh, Dr. Irving, I see you there in the little box. If I had my glasses on, I'd probably see it a little better. Thank you for joining us. We'll introduce you momentarily. I was wondering who that was over there. Thanks for joining us. Along with Adon, they're going to be presenting today. Said Caesar is in an interview. Jay.
Present.
Sudan. Susan.
Present.
Masa.
Present.
Diego.
Present.
Hey, happy New Year, Diego. Good to see you. You're gonna be joining us in Sacramento in a couple of weeks. John.
Present.
Marciano.
Present.
Sean.
Present.
Maria Jose.
Present.
So again, these wonderful colleagues represent the leaders of the constituency groups at our college. College Council is the highest level of governance at our college, where we talk about the operations, student success, completion, transfer, everything that takes place at our college. Again, I want to thank everyone for agreeing to meet in these 2 sessions before the start of spring semester. There are a lot of things to talk about. If you are watching on YouTube, or any of my colleagues that are present, if you would like to bring an agenda item forward, you can do so by reaching out to Janelli in my office, and or working with one of these amazing leaders that make up College Council. The second item on the agenda is approval of the meeting notes from December 6th. I want to publicly thank Janelli for doing the meeting notes. Would someone like to make a motion for approval? Any brave soul?
Chief Brunel.
Thanks, Jay.
Motion to approve.
Was that Robbie with a second?
Second.
Any further discussion about the meeting notes? All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any in opposition or who would like to abstain? Motion carries. Before we get into the budget update, and Janelle, if we could add to the next agenda an update on the foundation and staffing. And I'll give you all a precursor to it. Aaron Flanagan in my office is going to be returning on January 17th. We are in the process of hiring a foundation director and coordinator. Anyone who knows where the foundation office is, which is adjacent to the marketing office, there is only one office there. So what we're going to do is move the foundation down to the set of offices on the backside of the corporate ed center. I'll go more into detail. Maybe John, we can bring a map of where that is so that people know there are 3 offices down there that are unoccupied. The other thing that John is working on is a inventory of offices. Because of the number of people we're hiring, we want to make sure that they have a proper office to go into. But I'll update Janelle if we could on the next agenda. Mention that the governor put out his preliminary budget. Our chancellor will be sending something out in the morning. I'll probably follow up with an update. You see the bullets there. I want to caution us that there are absolutely economic uncertainties that we are dealing with, largely based on the funding for community colleges. In the state of California, that usually is derived by capital gains taxes. We have a lot of billionaires here and multi-millionaires. They tend to make money in the stock market. Anyone who has money in the stock market, I made the mistake of looking at my retirement the other day. And so the same thing we're feeling, those who are billionaires and millionaires are not generating the tax revenue that they would normally pay for capital gains taxes. The other, if anybody was in the market to buy a house right now, you know, the interest rates are up, which means people are not necessarily buying houses to the same degree. Well, these all begin to have an economic impact on our funding. So what you see is that the budget, I actually believe, is promising given the state of the economic outlook in our state. And so I want to caution folks when you start looking at this as seeing a COLA of 8.13, which would be one of the highest, if not the highest, in the history of California community colleges. Please, this is likely to change between now and the actual adopted budget, which won't occur until June. There will be a May revise, but there is some very promising outlook. Additional money in the tune of approximately $200 billion of one-time funding for outreach and enrollment. Again, these are preliminary budgets and numbers, but we just wanted to give you all that and how it affects our college. You'll see our district. You'll hear more probably tomorrow from our chancellor, and then I'll send something out. Any questions about the budget and the budget process? John will be working on a budget workshop for the campus. We will probably do it here as well so that we can go over and answer any questions that people may have about the budget. It's a promising budget, could always be worse, and certainly it could be better, but given the uncertainty of the economic outlook, there's some very promising things in the budget. This is probably the shortest budget I've seen in the last 6 years. Normally it's multiple pages, but that shows the amount of revenue funding that's available. With that said, I want to turn it over to Marciano, if I could, or should I turn it over to Adon? Speaking of budgets, last year, the governor put into the current budget funding to support our LGBTQIA+ students on our campuses. Anyone who's done any research on this population knows that they are more likely to be homeless, more likely to face certain levels of discrimination, challenges with their families. And I want to commend Don and Dr. Merle who came on board to help us look at our efforts in this area. Very, very worthy, and I can say I've learned quite a bit from Dr. Irving and the work that Adonna's been doing. And so they're going to provide an update on the work that we've been doing with these funds from the State Chancellor's Office. Adonna?
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Great to see you all. Yeah, it's been a pleasure working with Dr. Merle Irving in this work. We started back in the summer to have this kind of 6-month process of what we wanted to do on campus to get people at the table and talk about these the student population specifically in relation on how are we intentionally and proactively supporting them. And then also being able to include that content in a way that can be immersed throughout the culture and the policies that we have on campus. So it's been a pleasure working with Dr. Merle Irving, and it's been a pleasure hosting these different sessions that will go in a little bit in relation to the timeline. So I'll pass it on to, well, if Yaneli, if you don't mind sharing the slides. All right, perfect. So yeah, if you can click on to the next slide, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Irving to start with the introduction and some other pieces.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to all the good work that is being done through City College and how much we're doing transformation. You'll turn into the next slide. I think what you'll see is the timeline where we started in the last summer. Actually, it was July 1st. And I think you was going to, Don, was you going to talk a little bit about the timeline and the outcomes that we've seen so far on these sessions?
Yeah, so in relation to the timeline, again, like I mentioned, it started over the summer, and you'll see here in the slides, and Janelle will share the PDF with all of you afterwards, is that we wanted to include start at the manager's level and the deans, because we hear about all this work that happens across campus, and President Chavez had mentioned, let's start with the deans and the managers to get the conversation going, to figure out who knows what, and how can we get on the same page about better supporting this population. So these are the groups that ended up meeting with Dr. Irving throughout the fall semester in almost all of these sessions. So we had a session in July that really started with the deans and the managers, and then we invited the members from the working group, the Pride Hub working group, which include classified professionals and some faculty. Then we moved into a session in September, and you can see the actual titles that we used for the sessions. This session was able to give us a little more opportunity to talk about the foundational information that we need to better support this population, but do it also through the social justice statement that we had just created as a college, and being able to put it up front in terms of the work that we're doing. And we were lucky enough that we were able to get Professor Tracy McGee's class also in that session. And so it really brought the student voice into the work that we were doing. And then we ended up with a focus group in November that really focused on the LGBTQIA plus student employee experience. And so it was a smaller group with President Chavez and Dr. Irving, but really it became a brainstorming session or tangible things that can be improved to better support also our employees. You know, we wanted to make sure that this work and these efforts the students' experiences are at the core of our decisions, but we know that at City College, we also care about our employees and their experiences. And so we wanted to include their experience and how we do this work intentionally, both for the students and our employees. So that was kind of the timeline of this fall semester, ending with today's presentation. So I'll pass it on to you.
All right, so we're ready for the next slide. And I think this is where we get into the meat and potatoes. This is what we learned immediately after we had finished getting data and some qualitative data in that July session. We learned was that there's a lack of budget and personnel for the Pride Hub, and that a lot of faculty and staff that had committed their time and other administrators to that session find that to be one of the number one things we wanted to do to make transformation happen within that space. We need to increase budget and personnel. The other thing is that after looking and doing a gap analysis, we noticed that the website content and marketing, and then also the feature of LGBTQI plus experiences were different. So when we went to the LGBTQ student page, what we saw was a lot of community events, Pride Festival, things of that nature. Whereas if you looked at the Black Excellence student page or Latinx, you would see the college president and other features of students in leadership and in action at the college. We noticed that there was an opportunity to balance that so that there would be equity in how those students would be featured, knowing that City has had presidents of the student body and vice presidents of the student body that are members of the LGBTQ community. And so we wanted to make sure that those wonderful accolades are featured so that the students will feel at home. That there's a need for additional professional development. There's some individuals that's in the room that has a lot of knowledge. I want to take the opportunity to thank the committee. There's the LGBTQ committee that's been working with Dr. Sanchez and at City College before I was able to even enact this work, and they've done a lot of good work. But there's an opportunity for professional development so that there's an understanding, not only from a general perspective, from a much more in-depth perspective of what's needed when we talk about policy and procedure, and also what is it needed when we talk about recruitment of the student population, retaining the student population, and graduating them. The other thing that people made very clear is that the Pride Hub needs to be its own independent space. People feel very strongly that students need to see themselves in all positive light as being part of the community, as LGBTQ community, and where there's been mayors and congressmen and congresspersons, and that they see themselves in that light as an independent space and not as a shared space. We also learned that there's an opportunity for strategic planning around this effort, and that maybe that it's wrapped into a broader construct of a conversation with equity around all of our students that come from, whether they're from underserved populations or diverse populations. But the biggest thing too is that there was a strong interest that we saw a lot of people write a lot of names that they would like to champion this work. They like to be involved, which is a great, wonderful thing. And that people are really ready to start affinity groups. We can go to the next slide. So in August, we spent a lot of time before we even got to our session in September. There was a lot of work with looking at the district office and seeing some opportunities that we learned from students and some data that was collected from students and hearing from students. And one of the things that came up was preferred names. Email addresses are an opportunity for acceptance, that people understand that when they're sitting in that room, that name that you're reading may not be the preferred name of that student. And so what process is in place to ease that for that student? Also, email addresses with the names that are on those addresses and what complications there may be for someone to want the appropriate reference for them in the email address. So we actually got a lot of information that we learned during that session about how the district is working around this and how maybe we can use some of these elements at City College. The other conversation, which was a big conversation, was about gender inclusive bathrooms and how they need to be more accessible. People don't like to have to go get keys or ask to go into a gender inclusive bathroom. And so, what could be put into place? There was a lot of conversations on what could be done. And there was a lot of great feedback that was taken to some next sessions. On-campus events, people got really lively about what could be happening, fun things. There could be a drag show with the students in the student event. There could be fundraisers, but how there is an opportunity to bring those lived experiences into a positive life that exists on campus, that's not just in the hub space, but that's seen in open space and that other students can congregate and participate with all those to be teachable moments for faculty, staff, and any other ally. The students stated in the September session that they really appreciated the curriculum, courses that are being actually created there at City College. There's an opportunity to have faculty train other faculty on growing curriculum that is germane to understanding and having professional development growth opportunities with the LGBTQIA plus community. And the students really said that this is a place where they see themselves, they want to continue to see themselves, and that they want to make sure that they belong in all aspects. And so that's where there was an opportunity to see some actual events that may take place, not just in the Pride Hub, but in other spaces of the campus that could be inclusive to all. Next slide. So this was pretty, I will say every session has been very impactful. They've all have had foundations to building blocks onto each other. And in the focus groups that we did in November, to have the president, the college president involved, it was beyond transformative. We broke down the conversation into two spaces. One was policy and procedure. The other side was culture. Understanding what we would need to do. Let's say we wanted to do something around preferred names. We would have to address policy and procedure, but you also have to address culture. When we talk about email addresses, there's policy and procedure, and then there's ways of what we would look at, whether we bring in other supportive pieces of IT or other leadership in the college to help transform culture to ease the changes that are not germane and consistent to what's already existing now. There was a lot of conversation around how do we do the actions. There's actions that are changing and positive for gender inclusive bathrooms, but how do we get that communication out and so that there's a greater understanding and that people feel better about using that space and using the gender inclusive bathrooms without feeling uncomfortable. We talked a lot about the equity around the LGBTQI plus services, the resources, and I think that there is beyond a desire. I think that what we've learned is that we've moved to action. Everything from the fall to the focus group has helped each champion in each space move to action. But what we also learned is that we need those voices at the table. So if the voice was not at the table in July, or when we did one-on-one sessions in August, or when we did a September session, or when we did the focus groups, we realized that we need more voices at the table. There's a culture that's committed to continuous quality improvement. And I think that is a bigger piece. Dr. Susan Murray had took the opportunity to bring in the equity statement from City College, and also why are we committed to this work? And so it really showed a light on why everyone is committed to not only continuous quality improvement, to equity, to diverse voices, and that we're really committed to long-term change. And we know it's not an overnight thing through the fall, but that's why I think that the agenda that we had discussed to help continue transformation for going into this spring, and you can slide into the next slide because it goes right to saving the dates. The bigger piece is that we haven't gotten into intersectionality. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but we learned is that it's really important to have those voices at the table. So saving the date I thought it was February the 16th for Dawn. We got February the 8th on there, but at any rate, we want to have the students in a transformative conversation with the president, but also faculty and staff and people to feel welcome, to be engaged into the intersectionality Black History Month. What is it being Black with the intersectionality of the gender, their sexual orientation, and being a member of the LGBTQIA plus community? What is that like? What does it mean to belong at City? I mean, those will be some discussion points. The same thing for Women's History Month in March. How do we look at intersectionality and gender? And then womanism, and identifying whether it's female, not, what does that mean into the LGBTQI plus community, and where does that intersect for a lot of people who want to belong at City? So I think that is pretty much that. Don, did I miss anything? I think the next slide gets you to a thank you.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I want to give my colleagues an opportunity, if you have any questions or comments, thoughts about the presentation. The floor is yours if you'd like to ask any questions. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, and how long is the Pride Hub going to be open? Is the hours going to be extended next or this spring, or?
Yeah, so we're looking at opening them on a consistent basis, Monday through Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have flyers that was created already, and we're working right now on the staffing for it with both peer mentors, project assistants. We even have counselors interested in filling the space with personnel. But that's the hours that we're looking at, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Starting the first week of school.
And where is it, I'm sorry?
Monday through Thursday,
Yeah, but where?
in the Pride Hub on L206. The flyer will have the location. If you know me and the flyers that I've been working on, there'll be a QR code with a Google map so that people can find it, and the hours that it's going to be open.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Don, just real quick, I just want to be clear because we want to make sure we tell the right information. It is Thursday, February the 16th. I think the slide said the 8th. I just want to make sure.
That's correct. It's a 16.
Yeah, it's 16.
Okay, thank you.
I'll edit it before it gets sent out.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be communications sent out to the campus. And thank you for that, Dr. Irving, because I was looking through my calendar and I was like, I don't have anything on the date. So that was a good catch. I know Tilly had a question or comment.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Irving, nice to see you again, and thank you, Adnan, as well. I just wanted, not really a question, I just want to make a comment. I've been involved since July in this process, not really knowing where it was going to go. But thank you for all the efforts and bringing this forward. I'll just say that one of the things from the last focus group for me that's still in my mind and something that I changed out of that one session, I didn't realize all this time, I really felt that, oh, I give off the intention like I'm a safe person, a safe place to be, until it just came to me and said, well, but you don't have your pronouns listed on your, my little yellow Zoom picture, right? So I did add those, and after that, it just kind of seemed I got other people kind of talking to me a little bit differently, so there was a change. Now I need to make the next step. I can't remember who I saw in an email, but they also put it on their signature at an email, so I need to do that too. So thank you for all of you who've done that. I just wanted to out myself on that piece and something that I learned from the process.
Yeah.
And that's a good example that is a perfect example of culture becoming systemic. The exact thing that you brought. It didn't have to be a policy or procedure. It was your actions that helped move other people, and then other people followed that. So, I mean, that's a good example.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Irving. I share those sentiments, and I want to just publicly acknowledge Ashley and EOP&S who led that part of the discussion, and she, in a very powerful way, mentioned that when those pronouns are not there, there's a certain thought and concern about safety versus when they are. And that was powerful for me, that I didn't know unintentionally I was sending off a message that certainly I didn't want to. The other thing that I would ask Adnan, and I'd like to invite you back, because out of Dr. Irving's work with us, we have some very real, tangible next steps And I would love for you to share with this group and the entire college some kind of grid that says, here's what we learned, here's what we're doing, and here's when it's going to get our timeline of when we would like for it to be done. Because the other thing that I walked away with really troubled was the challenges that folks are having with changing preferred names. I had no knowledge of that. And I believe as recently as today or yesterday that Adon sent an email working through some of these technology challenges. And this is why we need to diversify the tech field, because sometimes people are sitting in offices coming up with these programs and they don't have the level of sensitivity that we need them to have. That becomes a gatekeeper for students who have very real needs to make changes that should be easy in concept versus practice. But Adon, if you could put together some kind of grid that we can share with some, because we have some very tangible things that frankly need to occur, beginning with the website. And Dr. Irving, you gracefully said, or mentioned rather, the website, but that's another area that was profound for me when he said, look, as the president, I go, you go on the Latinx page, there's the president with a message, and so, it's translated into Spanish, went to the Black Excellence page, then I go to the LGBTQ plus page, where's the president at? The president doesn't, and so that's something we need to learn from that, not just with this effort, but with other efforts on campus. Could be disabled students, could be, whatever student population. Are we offering similar approaches of support? And I want to also acknowledge that this notion of you belong here is aspirational, that there are people who don't believe that they belong here, and we need to make efforts to ensure that they do. But I want to commend Dr. Irving. It was learning for me. And I would not have had this opportunity to the degree that I did if we didn't already have a work group, if we didn't have people committed to social justice in its true meaning, which is, if you believe in Bell Hooks analysis, is just rooted in love, right? It's rooted in the love for the work that we do and the people in humanity, irrespective of anything else. So thank you all. And if you could get with us on that grid so that we do exactly what things were going to be done. And there was, I believe, an additional $50,000 or so to implement some of that staffing. But I'm also happy to report, I don't know if you all saw this, just last week, an announcement was made. We had some earmarks, I don't know if that's the politically correct way, federal funding that came through that is going to help us support both our Dreamers Resource Center and the Pride Center. And so to your question, Diego, about the staffing, look for those staffing hours to increase. Matter of fact, I'm just going to publicly say, Adon, figure out a way to get these people here more hours, and we know the money is coming, so we can figure out the financial part of that at some way, somehow. Any other comments, questions? Dr. Irving, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, just one last thing I would say is that I don't know if you can really quantify the changing of minds. And, I think that one of the biggest things that has come with this is thought leadership. And it was very encouraging at the focus groups, like how that felt. There was like a power hour. And so our goal is for the lunch and learns for them to be small, but that we get that impact and we get that same type of engagement for thought leadership. And I think that we just want to remember that we are in higher education. And at the end of the day, is that whose mind did we change? Who did we help? And who did we make better?
That was deep and spot on. Anything else, Adon?
No.
Yeah, well, thank you all again. Good to see you, Dr. Irving.
Thank you.
And you're going to be here in person on the 16th for that event.
Right. Yeah. We want that same focus group feel. It's, that very intentional. So that's the goal.
Okay, well, take care. Nice seeing you. Thank you again.
Thank you. You guys take care. Thank you.
Great work, Don, and frankly, we now have a foundation to build on and to be able to shore up some very real gaps for some very deserving students. So looking forward to the progress. And if you have not been to the Price Center, want to also acknowledge Sylvia and her leadership, because I went in there one day and I just have this thing about blank walls, that this is a canvas to send messages, which is why you see more murals on campus and that sort of thing. And I issued the challenge and Sylvia responded. And now when I go in there, I'm prideful about the Pride Center. And it's not probably where we want it to be, but it's leaps and bounds above. I'm happy when I go in there. So if you haven't been there, please, well, it's gotta be open for you to be able to go in there. So please stop by. I'm gonna turn it over to John Parker to provide an update on the SB 169, our housing application.
Great, thank you. What you see in the attachment is just pretty much an overview of the process that we did to developing our construction package. I'm not going to walk through it. To put this into scope, we worked with RNT, you'll recall the initial architectural firm, for approximately 5 months. We had about a 3-month turnaround to get the package submitted. That was conceptual design, as this is as well. This is a conceptual design, it's not finalized. This informs the package that we send to the state. The state has about 11 criteria that they will grade our package. The criteria being the need, obviously, the geographic location, the cost per bed, the cost per square foot, what others in our county and district are doing, just to name a few. I did not include these as an attachment because it is very convoluted beyond the scope of what I'm explaining here today. We were notified by the state that the requirement with the application submission is that the board will now need to approve the application. We just learned this December. So this will need to go to the board next week prior to the application deadline, which is the 25th, might be the 26th, but I think it's the 25th, to the state. Just a high level overview of what transpired. So we worked with RNT for 3 months, then we worked with SGP&A for just about a year, almost a year or so. Very comprehensive process, and working with all constituency groups to include students to do a needs assessment, impact study, environmental scan, you name it, what are our needs in terms of sustainability, parent resource center, parent support center, family resource center, where to restore bicycles. It was pretty inclusive. We concluded that process in December and have prepared the package. High level for College Council is approximately 300,000 square foot facility, roughly 500 units, approximately 800 beds. So there'll be multi-unit facilities, if that's right. Yeah, there will be multi-room units, if you will, and some will be single. There are different schemes from the designer. This will be a design build, which means one firm will design and build. Sometimes you can have guaranteed maximum pricing bid, which you have the designer come in and have project man or construction company come in and do it separately. This will be a design build under one firm. So 500 units, 800 beds, price tag, is this, approximately $192 million. We're in California. I understand that is a lot of money, sticker shock there. We're going to the state, however, with an ask of about just under $80 million, of which the district would be responsible for the 119, 18, whatever remaining. So our package, and this will bode well for us, this will help us in our scoring with the state of the 11 criteria that they'll be using. They want to see that we'll have some skin in the game, and that we've been planning, that we have space that's available, which we do. That is what we're sending to the board next week to have them approve this application. Again, my apologies, that's not included here. It's just too much to go over in this meeting. We don't have enough time to go over all the criteria. The schematics, I wouldn't worry about. I can show those, but those are going to change. When we get to the point where we have the funding, we're going to bring another firm in. We're going to go through this process again. That's where we'll sharpen our pencils, determine what this is really going to look at. The 3 different schemes that we're submitting are just to get a cost, and that's it. Not to use for going forward to be approved to be built. So I just wanted to make that clear. Ricky, anything you wanted to add or wanted me to touch on?
Yeah, the purpose of this is to have a public record that we share the information. You all represent hundreds of people on campus who need to be updated on our efforts about housing. I think John put it perfectly, that what you see in the packet are, don't hold us to every detail, because there's a process once you actually receive the money. For those of you who've been here at the college to build these buildings, it's the same. You go out for a bond, you say, this is the conceptual thing we'd like to do, someone funds it, then you get user groups together. The other thing I would say is, really there's 2 things. One, I'm disappointed in the way that the state has modified the application process. It negatively impacts a college like ours that serves non-traditional students, i.e. people who have families. And in a perfect world, we would have designed a housing project that allowed our students who have children who face very real astronomical cost of housing in San Diego to be housed in this facility. I don't know that we'll be able to do it to the degree that we aspire to do it, given the changes that the state made to the funding formula for this. Lastly, one of the things I didn't mention on the budget that is connected to this is that what you start to see during a recession or economic downturns is accounting approaches in the government. And John reminded me of the term called deferrals. Well, one of the deferrals that the governor is proposing is to the housing money. He set aside several $1 billion for housing, and the governor in his preliminary budget, you'll see, is deferring about $900 million. So we've done all this work, we'll submit the application, but there's a very, very high chance, unless something changes in the economic status of the state, is that the amount of money that was available to build these projects may in fact no longer be available. Literally, we just found that out hours ago. That won't stop us, but that may prolong the project. So just wanted to put that out there. Any questions for John about this?
I don't mind just jumping in and cutting in for John. I've had the opportunity to work in some buildings before, but I really enjoyed this process and watching it evolve from a small groups, bigger groups, small back and forth. I really enjoyed this last group when they brought the campus and faculty brought the students in. So I thought that was real. I just wanted to make sure, since Ricky's talking about putting it on record, that we did have students involved in the process.
Did you say we had students involved?
We had students involved in that process, and I just thought that was important, right?
Yeah, it was a grassroots approach rather than a top-down saying, this is what we need from, not administration, but from our.
Those administrators.
Those administrators and architects, but we got very good feedback, and with surveys, we actually have surveys that we sent out to students.
So the next steps are to go to the board for approval of the application first.
Correct.
Which is next week.
And then it
And
goes to
after
the state.
that, it
the
goes to
following
the
week.
state and then by the follow-up.
Pretty tight turnaround, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and we were just notified of that process last month by the state.
Any other questions for John? John, Tilly mentioned students being involved. Can you high level, who else has seen this document?
This particular document that's on the back,
Yes.
I don't know who all this went out to.
Okay, let me ask it a different way. What other groups did you present the process for the application to? Because this is listed as an action item. And I don't know my Senate colleagues if.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you can come and present at the Senate. But I was gonna do it after the meeting, but yeah, that would be something, just to share what's going on with the faculty.
Yeah.
With this process, but I'm not sure in terms of action, I don't know if we need to vote on anything as a faculty.
I don't know that we need to vote on it,
Yeah.
and this may be my fault, because I may have told them before that we did.
Yeah, no.
Because it's going to the board, so normally when it's going to the board,
Yeah,
We didn't go there. We didn't
yeah,
go
so
there.
we found this all out in
Yeah.
December, right? So I don't,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
we would have done it sooner.
Mhm.
And so I think
I
it'll be
believe
your.
it's informational, yeah, you can come and present just to inform.
But what I'm inquiring about though, are you all comfortable voting on this today? Because I believe it's going to be an action item on the board, which in terms of a perfect world, we want to
Yeah.
have it, and, you know, respectfully, if you all want to abstain, you can. We would have brought this to you all sooner,
Yeah.
but we found out as we were approaching, winter break that it needed to be board approved, which then means you normally would want it approved by the college. Again, this is high level. This isn't everything in here is going to get done, but this provides like a scope of the concept of that we're thinking about. And faculty were involved in the process.
Absolutely, every constituency.
So what we would be approving with the vote is the application
Correct.
that is
Correct.
going to the board.
Correct.
So it's just the application.
With that said, is there a motion for approval?
This is Sean. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Sean. Second. Masa with a second. Any further discussion? I just want to state for the record that I'm uncomfortable when we have to do things like this and it didn't go to all of the constituency groups for a vote. But be it as it may, in the state of California, in our governments, sometimes we get emails like this in the 11th hour saying something needs to be board approved, no different than the matter with the courses and the open registration matter. But I would like it to be on the record. So we've got a first and a second. Any further discussion?
And I just wanted to add to the housing committee. We had a housing committee, which used to be the facility master plan, and all constituency groups and the housing committee were present at the final presentation from SGPA. Everyone's seen it. Again, it's just that they didn't give us enough runway at all.
Everyone who was on the committee saw.
Everyone who was on the committee saw it, and correct, and all constituency groups were represented at the final presentation.
And again, in a perfect world, had we not received this communication from the state, well, if we would have received it in a timely manner, we would have run this through our governance approval process. And so I just want to state that for the record. All in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone like to abstain and or object? Hearing none, motion passes. We will go on to College Council goals. Dr. Merman?
Yes. So, going back to earlier in the fall semester, we had a work session of College Council to review our purpose statement, begin the review of the charge, look at the where we fit in the overall governance structure, and start to identify some goals that we can then, once approved, document specify what activities and tasks will implement those goals, who'd be responsible for following up, and how we would evaluate progress and impact. So after that session, where we had, I think, 4 different groups brainstorming, we did some consolidation at the end of that session. We brought that information back, and there was a small work group of 3, which included Tilly Chavez, Jocelyn Hill, who was the SPA representative at that time, and myself, who went through that consolidated information and came out with some draft goal statements. So Janelle, if you can pull those up on the screen. I'm sorry that we didn't get these out in writing, but it's pretty brief, so hopefully this presentation is sufficient. And this reflects what we were, what the work groups discussed. Janelle, is there a way to increase the size of that? Any? Yeah, there we go.
Even larger?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there.
All right, there we got it.
Nelly to the rescue.
Thank you.
I had an instant headache, like, what? I cannot squint that much.
Perfect. So, you know, that discussion in our work session was pretty far ranging. And we identified a lot of needs. And when Tilly and Jocelyn and I sat down to review all of that input, we wanted to be sure that we could be realistic and wanted to be sure that we, what's the best way to put this? Some of these things are beyond the capacity of College Council itself as an entity. And so what we really need to do as College Council, as that highest level governance body, is define a process and then follow up and monitor the implementation of that process. But it's not going to be College Council that's necessarily going to do all of that. So in goal 1, we have that regarding a process for reviewing and updating our mission. As we have been preparing for accreditation and been preparing for our first baccalaureate degree program, we discovered that we have not engaged in a mission review since about 2015. And so there doesn't appear to be any documentation on how we went about that. And so that actually is an item, the next item on the agenda. So I won't say anything more about that now, but the proposal here is that College Council design this process so that we can not only go through this mission update now to be sure that it's current, but that we have a timeline and a cycle and clear information on how we get broad input into that. Second item, there was a lot of interest in hearing more student voices at College Council and doing more planning around presentations and what to anticipate. I think that not only serves College Council members, but it serves our communication with the college. You know, Ricky has noted that engagement has gone up since we started broadcasting meetings on YouTube. We're continuing that practice, even though we're no longer holding the meeting itself on Zoom. And that as part of that process, College Council needs to hear regular updates on our other institutional plans, our equity plan, our enrollment management plan, our strategic plan. So with that kind of calendar in mind, this goal essentially asks College Council to commit to establishing that practice. And then the third area, and this is probably the biggest scope and one that it probably is going to take more than a year to fully accomplish, is the need for consistent documentation of procedures, standard operating procedures, how we do things and how we carry out certain functions.
For example, committees.
Yes. Yes, committees, budget development, hiring. Some of these things have more documentation than others. Some of these things have been reviewed more recently than others. Not all of these things are housed in the same place. Then below that, there's also a layer for, departmental procedures and the guidance that people need to do their jobs. And so again, the recommendation is that College Council oversee a development of a process and a timeline that would call on different areas of the college to do this work, to review the information they have, to update it if it needs to be updated, and clarify where it should be published so that everybody knows where to find it. So those were the three goals that grew out of that very rich conversation. So we wanted to bring these back here. This is the first time you all have seen this since that initial work session. So we can have some discussion and then bring this back in 2 weeks for approval. And, once approved, there would be work plans for each of them that would include an evaluation component.
Wow,
I think it looks
all I gotta say, wow, that's incredible, yeah, good job.
Yeah,
That
well, it was a great discussion.
I know, this
There
was
was
probably-
lots of good
I
information.
remember, but this, I think they're really attainable and specific enough to be able to get it done, so good job. I know we had a lot of discussions about it, so.
I agree. I'm trying to process through some of this, mainly because it's January.
Yes.
So we're mid-year, and particularly with B, that I completely agree with. What is the feasibility in a 6-month period? Like, can I ask for consideration or a friendly amendment to, because I was trying to find a better word than vague, for not specific. Like, should we have sub goals, right? So given that it's January, what would be a reasonable number or desired number to have for 3? Right, so I'm almost thinking like accreditation where you're starting and everybody hasn't done it. But everybody's gotta do it. You normally say, okay, let's do 6 this year, 6 next year,
For
right?
number 2, you mean, goal number 2 or 3?
3, defining process and timeline for departments to develop and publish standard operating procedures.
I think it allows us for the next 5 years to
Yeah.
develop whatever we need to.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm
Right now,
just
we
not
don't-
I think
seeing
you
it.
was, I
Yeah.
think you were thinking about the annual calendar, no, of topics?
No, I was talking about number 3, because I
Okay,
think it
yeah, you
says
said 2.
publish standard operating procedures.
So
Wait.
if I may, I think I understand, there may be a conflation just in terms of the grammar. I think if I'm understanding the goal correctly, it's not having all the departments create their standard operating procedures. It's simply our task to lay out the process and the procedure, and then over the next, whatever we decide under 3, let's say 2 to 5 years, each
That makes me feel
department
much better.
yeah.
will then develop their standard operating procedures. And
Exactly.
yeah, but all we're doing is sort of the process, so that
Okay.
they can then go implement
Yes.
in
Uh-huh.
like the timeframe to do
Okay.
that.
And then establishing that cycle that, okay,
Yes.
and then now we've gone through everything and then it's going to come back again for
Right.
review. parallel
So I
to
got
what
that
our
in the
Board of
first part, but it
Trustees
was the "and" that got me, right?
Okay.
So, and publish standard operating procedures for key.
I mean, publication should be part of the timeline, but that wouldn't
You
necessarily
meant
mean that it would
publication
happen
of
this year.
the timeline and the processes and procedures for developing SOPs.
Okay.
Yes? That's why I was thinking it was a grammatical.
Well, but for example, a standard operating procedure would be to, send out agendas a week in advance of the meetings, and in the agendas, link all the documents. So that's a procedure. So that's, for example, something that the college council will do and say, well, this is the procedure, that this is the expectation, that when you have committees, you send an agenda a week in advance, you link all the documents to the agenda, and then in the meeting, you take minutes and you publish those minutes on the website.
And that's clear, right?
Yes.
That's clearly
So that's an
articulated.
example of the
Mhm.
standard procedure in that case.
Yeah, but that's an SOP, like.
Yes.
Literally, for departments to develop and publish standard operating procedures, SOPs for key college functions, that's literally a preposition. Our goal is to define the process and the timeline for departments to do this. And our goal is to implement a regular schedule for review. Those are the two goals that we're doing. Everything in the preposition is what we're developing the processes and procedures for.
Yeah, it's the and that throws me off, right? Because it's and publish without a timeline or a number. It makes an individual think that I've got to get this done in the next 6 months
Oh,
or
I see.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
When you're talking conceptually, we want to do this and agree on a time to do it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Which is, I
Yes.
think that's what it means, define a process and timeline. So I think the college council will define that process and that timeline.
So then I would suggest that there's a period
Yeah,
Okay.
after to define a process and timeline for departments to develop standard operating procedures, period. Once developed, the timeline and SOP will be published on X department's website.
Or we could say departments to develop / publish standard operating procedures for key college functions. If you put a slash in there instead of the and, that might help, right? It's another possibility to clarify.
And, or you could put, brackets or parentheses and publish parentheses when complete. Because and maybe I'm alone on an island here, like I was excited and I was like, oh no, when is this gonna get done? In six months. But I mean, just, that's with me barely being able to.
but that's a good thought process, because are we, as the college council, now you're bringing me back, are we gonna do that in the next 6 months? Hopefully, we can define a process and timeline within the next.
That I think we can do, absolutely,
That I
right?
think, yes.
Because John was somewhat working on this
That would be nice.
already, so he can work with a group of people from this committee who would like to lead those efforts and bring back a plan that can be implemented. Right, if that's what you're saying, we're good to go.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
when I
that's
saw
what
the
we're saying,
and, I
yes.
was like, oh, and get this done by when? But we could absolutely, that was the only piece.
Okay. We can clarify that.
Do we need to vote on this?
Next,
It comes back
week,
to
coming
me.
back.
Okay. Do we have any volunteers to work? Is that my understanding of what needs to be done, right? Because when we say college council, we're really talking about like a subcommittee of college council. It's hard enough to get us all in one place during this meeting. Is there anyone interested? There's a couple ways to go about this. Is there anyone interested in working with John Parker on this? If not, you won't hurt my feelings. John Parker can draft something and bring it, and then we can discuss it here for to agree on the timeline and what it looks like.
I'm happy to help.
Okay.
I am happy too, but I think we're skipping the first vote on these goals, right? That we're all in agreement of the goals.
But I just heard that it had to come back in 2 weeks.
Well,
Yeah, but we
this
don't
has
have
to come back in 2 weeks
Yeah, but
to
the
vote on
goals,
it.
we don't have to have a proposal or a timeline in 2 weeks unless we want to.
It's just
but-
to, it's just to say that we all agree on the goals, right?
This is like a first read,
Okay.
Yeah,
right? And then we come back in 2 weeks and we
Yes.
vote on it, and then we can form subcommittees to sort
Oh,
of
so you're
start
saying
doing
wait
it.
till then to do that?
yes.
Yeah, because then we can find some committees for each,
Well, as soon as I see you develop something, like, we need to get working on this. It's gonna get done. Okay, no, we can wait 2 weeks.
but yeah, I'd be happy to be in the conversations too.
Okay.
I know.
Well, the other piece of this, we've been talking about this with academic senate, but we've also, the beauty of having new people is you start to figure out where there are some gaps. And, you know, I use John a lot because out of the 3 vice presidents, he's the one who came during COVID, so he didn't have the pleasure of meeting people or getting hands-on, like how things really work. And he's hiring, hopefully you don't mind me saying this, you know, this is his first time going through the hiring process with a manager, whereas we've all hired a number of managers. And so it's actually interesting to hear someone who's going through something for the first time ask certain questions, ask where certain things are. And you start to realize that some of this, and some of us come from an oral tradition to begin with. Like you realize, oh, wow, this stuff needs to be written down.
Now, can I propose, because I know we can bypass the reading, I mean, if we want to vote today, then we can just start working on it since we all seem in agreement. I don't know why we need to come back and vote on it. It's not like we have to study anything unless anybody wants.
Was it an action item on the agenda?
No.
It wasn't listed as.
Yeah, so it's gotta come back then.
As an action item.
And so you'll put it as an action item. And something Maria Jose said, whether she realized it or not, in her description of a standard operating procedure, which I absolutely agree with, and it's gonna be on the manager's agenda later, is folks, we have to start getting any attachments and things that we're going to be discussing. Please listen, I know everyone is busy and no one's doing this intentionally, but we really do have to get to the point where we send this stuff out beforehand so that we can process it and then that, you know, otherwise we're just getting it right here. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just not the preferred way to do this. Even with the PowerPoint prior, like we really want to get to the point where we have this stuff to Janelle and she can send it out. My preferred is to send it out Friday before the Tuesday meeting, barring any holidays and that sort of thing, but
Yeah, that would be nice.
Good job.
I do think it needs to come back because it
Yeah, good
wasn't an
job.
action item. Let's move to the next item.
That was really good.
The
Yes,
vision
You know, I want to start
Sure.
this one off. How organize all of
Well, so
our.
this is actually part of the first goal for College
Yeah.
Council was to develop a process and procedure for reviewing our mission. Since we haven't done it since 2015, Sean, Susan, Maria Jose, and I were working to sort of like start this process, and we have identified the date and secured the room. It's MS 140, and we will be meeting on February 10th, I believe. Let me double check my calendar. We have secured your attendance for the first 30 minutes to get us started, Ricky, with
Thank you.
Janelli. February 10th, Friday, February 10th at MS 140. So those were our first steps. Our next step is to make sure that this is widely publicized during Flex Week. So I will be developing a flyer and getting it to Susan and Sean and Maria Jose to like make sure they're all on board, and then we'll send it to all of the deans, and I will include you on that. Send it to all of the deans and hopefully have it announced at convocation. Send it to all of the chairs, talk about it during the Chairs Academy so that we're widely publicizing it. The forum itself, we still need to determine the content and structure and agenda. So we'll be setting up a meeting with the 4 of us to do that. And then after that, we'll find a small writing group, which I imagine will be the 4 of us again, and finalize what we got from the forum. The forum will be an in-person thing in MS 140. In addition, we are going to have some sort of digital space where people who cannot attend will still be able to give their input. And that's going to
And this
be
is with
developed.
students too, right? Because I don't know if we talked about that or not. Because we,
Yes.
we're doing one with students,
Yes.
like we did for the
Mhm.
social justice.
Yes, so, yes, and I think something that we hadn't talked about, but I was hoping we could find some funding to have coffee and donuts
Easy.
for this thing, okay?
Easy,
Maybe
easy.
something healthier.
Coffee, donuts, and Mandarin Origins, I don't
Yes,
care, something. But yes, did I miss anything?
Janelli has her
I have a
hand up.
question.
Yes.
What time will this forum be on the tech?
It's from 9 until noon,
Okay. Thank you.
and I think we reserved your calendar from like 9 to 9:30.
I would gladly come and gladly have some refreshments and you all can just work with Janelli and Ira in terms of what you would like. And if we can either get it or you all can get it and be reimbursed however you would like to do it.
Maple bars.
Ooh, those are good.
Developed a taste for salty black licorice over the holidays.
Are there questions, comments, suggestions?
No, looking forward to this. I would just say, as we reflect on the mission and the fact that it has not been updated since 2015, that there was also a span in there with our educational plan. So this is all in alignment with regular updating and assessing it. And, to some degree, we made efforts with the social justice commitment. And that while we were working on that, that's at some point when we realized that we may want to update the mission so that there was greater alignment between the social justice commitment and the mission. So this is all timely. And given the number of people who we are bringing into the college, whether it be promotions or otherwise, the face of our college is changing post this pandemic and a host of other things that are going on in the world. So I look forward to seeing what the group comes up with because this will stay with us again for another 5-10 years. And so the work that has already been done, Robbie and the team that worked with the land acknowledgement, the team that worked with social justice commitment, I believe Maria Jose and others were involved in that we're going to have a lot of great documents, artifacts to show our commitment and it being carried out into practice. I really do have a theme with these walls as being prime real estate. So you'll start to see the social justice commitment and land acknowledgement. And then when we get to the point that we have an updated mission, go in places on the campus so that we constantly remind ourselves why we're here and why we do this work. So thank you all for your efforts. Any questions or other comments about this?
And I just wanted to piggyback on that the social justice committee, it was a lengthy process. It took about a year. And part of it was a lot of the conversation with the mission and the values. And there was a lot of conversation that's public information and the process is also public. Thanks to Susan putting together like a webpage where it clearly states the process. And I'm sure that Dr. Robbie, you also has maybe from the land acknowledgement. So really it's a collaborative approach and in alignment also on who we are and our values. So I just wanted to put that there because it was a tremendous collaborative effort and I'm sure we're gonna do the same. And I invite Diego, of course, and all your peeps to be part of it because you are definitely the most important. So you always give us the best perspective into, what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I'm hoping we can add Diego to those conversations and really have you there in your team if you can.
I'm glad to be there.
Thank you, Maria Jose, agreed, and I look forward to the work coming out. I wanted to provide an update on enrollment. Did the document make it? I don't see the document, so.
I have it. I have the PDF.
Okay, so what I'll do is, Julie, let's just add this to the next meeting.
The enrollment.
The enrollment update to the next meeting, send it out electronically to folks so you see. And one of the things I was chatting with both Tilly and Marciano about in our meeting prior to this is really fits with the work with the mission, that our identity of our college is changing, has changed. And what I mean by identity, I don't necessarily mean demographics. I mean the modality in which we offer and the type of programs we offer. We've got a lot of new deans, we've got a lot of new chairs. We have programs that have a lot of new faculty members. And so as we start talking about enrollment, we have programs that need to be rebuilt. Cosmetology comes to mind. We have programs that need to be strengthened, supported. And so we are really depending on our vice presidents and working with the deans and working with the chairs and our faculty and classified professionals to really put forth the vision for how enrollment will look on our college. Sudan mentioned whether, we can talk about some of the mission pieces and convocation. I'll also be talking about enrollment and the efforts that are underway around the promise, expanded promise, so that folks get excited about it versus saying something was taken from you. Right, as we start looking at the allocation of enrollment, the expanded promise, which we'll bring to College Council, is a good thing because it'll make your enrollment quicker, easier. Scheduling, it should alleviate some of the challenges, pressures that the chairs have. And so you'll start hearing us talk a lot more about that much. Thank Genevieve and the entire committee who's working on the expanded promise, which is packaging classes, bundling, but words have meaning, bundling classes so that students, when they come in, will be automatically registered in those classes. That means those classes should feel quicker so that the faculty can be working on other areas. And so we'll have enrollment added next meeting. Wanted to some of this is informational, summer schedules for teams. Certainly there are needed to be exceptions to this. And sorry, Jay, there's some areas that don't have that liberty of necessarily being here for teams. Some of us are here 612s, but we're moving forward in that. We launched it this past year, moving forward. Spring convocation, everybody is invited. Flyers are going out. Our speakers for convocation, led by Sean and Maria Jose, are our new employees. During our Christmas celebration, which was the largest in my 6 years here, people came out to the holiday party. I ran into a brand new faculty member who said this was their first time meeting people in person. So we heard from our students in the fall. We'll hear from new employees in the spring to hear how has their experience been like getting a job during a global pandemic. Again, I want to thank Maria Jose and Sean. They'll be moderating that panel. After convocation, we will have a small special luncheon. Shouldn't say special luncheon. The President's Luncheon, specifically for our faculty who are receiving tenure. Let's give a round of applause for Maria Jose. She's one of them. The faculty receiving tenure, all of our new hires, and we're inviting our retirees. We think there's going to be a cross-pollination with people coming, talking about the history of the college, those who have been here for 4 or so years and those who are new. More information will be coming out about that event for those 3. We normally would not have food during spring convocation. So we're gonna have just a small luncheon for those folks. Join us on the MLK parade, Sunday, January 15th. There'll be shirts, the opportunity to come connect with the community. It's a great event if you've never attended. I'm trying to debate whether I'm gonna bring my dog. He lost his mind the last time I had him with me out there. It was too much excitement, too many people he didn't know. But it is a great event to bring your family, your friends to come help walk and celebrate the legacy of
Nice to
Dr.
see you here.
Martin Luther King Jr. Anything you want to say about that? There was an email?
There was an email from Adan that came out with the registration link, and you get to submit your t-shirt size on that registration site as well.
Hang out with the City College family on a Saturday.
Sunday.
Oh, excuse me, Sunday. Hopefully it doesn't rain, although it's saying it's going to rain, but
No rain.
no rain? Marciano says no rain.
That's what they say.
The second event, and want to just give a very well-due deserved accolades to Clarissa. She has been doing an amazing job from the time she stepped foot on campus, but certainly the last several months organizing our students in community outreach events. These are two that are going on the 21st and the 28th, where we're going to go door to door in our community. We've pre-identified some routes to just invite some people to come out to San Diego City College and take some classes. Marciano, asked Marciano and Clarissa to send more information about that to the campus if you'd like to sign up. And again, hang out with City College on the weekends. Are there any other updates, announcements for the good of the order? Yes.
Skip 8, is that next one?
Governance handbook.
I skipped number 8 because that is going to be next time. We are going to add that back to the agenda for the next time. Any other updates?
How about good news of the story?
Good news is good.
So my heating system went down in December, which
That was
was a
good.
bad news. But the person who came to fix was our graduate, and also Jacqueline, and, you know, our air program graduates, and, you know, he has shared that he had a wonderful.
Did that get you a discount?
No. He gave me some good idea. Yeah, it was his second career, but yeah.
Super
It's good
sweet.
to hear that our, you know, lab tech, Byron, and our instructors are all wonderful. So yeah, it's good to hear.
Well, I'm glad you said good news. This is unofficial good news. Unofficial good news. Unofficial good news is I was alerted yesterday. I do not have this in writing, but I was alerted yesterday that the president of the Board of Governors signed off on our bachelor's degree. I've been requested to fly up again to Sacramento for the Board of Governors meeting on the 23rd. I don't know that I've told my office that, because this is hot off the press, to advocate again for the program as there's going to be a board item for the Board of Governors. I am taking the people who told me this at their word. When I get it in writing, it will be shared with the entire campus. And it has been a lot of work behind the scenes. Want to thank David and everyone who has been involved in this. Certainly, I'll never forget, this will probably be one of the biggest legacies in my career professionally, because I walked into that meeting with David intending to talk him out of this. And he was so positive and wanting to take on the CSUs.
Wow.
And had done his research, which is a testament to his professionalism and his commitment to our students, that we went up against the CSUs head on, and it's going to come out, I believe, that we are offering a much well-needed and deserved bachelor's degree. Also have some preliminary information that the CSU faculty are not happy about this and have identified a legislator to take forth legislation saying that they need to be able to sign off before we move forward. And so the dust has not cleared yet. This is going to, I don't like to think in terms of fights, but this is going to be a family disagreement with our colleagues at the CSUs, but more on that as it comes up. And thank you, Mas, for sharing that, because it reminded me that I wanted to share some good news. If there are no other updates, it's good to see you all. Happy New Year. There is one other thing, and this is a somber note that I feel necessary to share. and I'm gonna talk about this in convocation. Please, let's be reminded to be kind to one another. One of the things as a president that I do that many other than my office and maybe the vice presidents know about is anytime someone has a family member who passes. As a college, we send flowers, we send a note. There have been more people between November and December who have lost a loved one. That you never know what your colleague is dealing with. You never know what our students are dealing with. Let's just be reminded that life is precious, to be kind. People's mental health is very, very real. And I just wanted to share with us as we are having very lively discussions about the future of our college and whether or not we should be able to work from home or come in person or vaccinated or not vaccinated. Let's be reminded to be kind to one another because there have been more people at this college that have lost a loved one in the last 2 months that I've seen in the last 6 years. So just be reminded of that. Take 5 seconds and think how you're going to respond because the person may be going through something and you might be able to, you may be able to take something off a person's plate versus adding on to it. So with that said, folks, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you